Imagine a man with hands as rough as tree bark. He spends his days pulling a plow through rocky soil under a cold sky that promises long winters. This is a Norse farmer living a hard life in the cold lands of Scandinavia. His world is small, just his family's land and the nearby village. Now picture that same man. His eyes are not on the soil, but on the sea. He holds an axe, not a plow. His small farm is gone, replaced by the deck of a long, sleek ship. He is no longer just a farmer. He has become a Viking raider, a name that would make people in faraway lands tremble with fear. How did this happen? The life of a Norse farmer was a constant struggle. The soil was poor, and the time to grow crops was very short. A bad harvest meant that your family might not survive the winter. Life was tied to the seasons and to the small piece of land you worked every single day. Their world was built around the family and the clan. You were loyal to your family above all else. You worked together to build your home, raise animals, and grow enough food to live. It was a life of very hard work, with little time for anything else. There was no promise of getting rich or famous. But for the Norse people, something was more important than just staying alive. It was honor. Having a good name and a strong reputation was everything. People would sing songs about brave men, and their stories would be told for a long time. But how could a farmer, stuck on a small piece of land, earn that kind of honor? This was a big problem, especially for younger sons. In their way of life, the oldest son usually got the family farm. This left the other brothers with nothing. They had no land, no way to make money, and no clear path to earn respect. They were young, strong, and wanted to make a name for themselves. So you have all these ambitious young men with nowhere to go. Their lands were surrounded by thick forests, tall mountains, and a cold, dangerous sea. It seemed like they were trapped. But they had a secret. They had built something that would change their world forever. It was a piece of technology so amazing for its time, it was like their version of a spaceship. It could take them to new worlds they had only heard about in stories. It was the key that unlocked the door to the rest of the world. What was this amazing invention? It was the longship. This wasn't just any boat. It was a masterpiece, built for speed and surprise. The ship was made with overlapping wood planks, a style called clinker-built. This made the ship strong but also flexible, so it could bend with the ocean waves instead of breaking against them. The longship had another brilliant secret. It was built to be very shallow on the bottom. This meant it could sail in water that was not very deep. It could land on any beach, and it could even sail far up rivers, deep into other countries where no one expected an attack from the sea. This ship was the perfect tool for a surprise raid. When those Norse farmers looked out from their shores, they saw a world that was big and full of chances. To the west, England was not one strong country. It was a puzzle of small kingdoms, always fighting each other. They were rich, but they were weak and divided. Their coasts were long and hard to protect. Further south was the giant Carolingian Empire, a kingdom built by the great King Charlemagne. But it was not strong anymore. It was breaking apart from the inside, with family members fighting for control. This huge, rich land was distracted. It was a world full of wealthy towns and churches, with no one strong enough to guard them all. It was an open door, just waiting for someone to walk through. Then, in the year 793, a quiet island in England called Lindisfarne changed everything. This island was home to a monastery, a holy place for monks. It was famous for its beautiful books and treasures made of gold and silver. It was a place of peace and prayer, guarded only by men who had promised not to fight. For the Vikings, it was the perfect target. Their longships landed silently on the beach. The raid was fast and brutal. The news of this attack on a holy place sent a shockwave across all of Europe. A new age had begun, the age of the Vikings. People wrote that dragons had been seen in the sky, a sign of the terror that was to come. But what made these raiders so fearless? To understand them, we must look at what they believed. For a Norse warrior, the greatest honor was not to die of old age in a warm bed. The best death was a glorious death, fighting in a battle with a weapon in your hand. They believed in a place called Valhalla. It was a huge, shining hall where the god Odin lived. If a warrior died bravely in a fight, they would be taken to Valhalla. There they would feast and fight alongside the gods forever, getting ready for the final great battle. This belief took away the fear of death. It turned it into a prize to be won. But the story of the Vikings is not just about fighting. They were much smarter than that. They were not just destroyers. Over time, these raiders changed. They became some of the greatest traders the world had ever seen. They were very good at adapting. The same longships that carried warriors to a raid could also carry furs, amber, and tools to a busy market. They used the same skills for sailing and finding their way to build huge trade routes. These routes stretched from the cold shores of North America all the way to the rich markets of Constantinople, the greatest city in the world at that time. This brings us to the biggest puzzle of all. How could a person be two completely different things? How could they be a careful farmer, tending to their crops and animals at home in Norway, and also be a feared raider, whose name was whispered in fear across the sea? How did they live this double life? One season, they were a trader, talking peacefully in a far-off market. The next season, they were a warrior, storming a beach with an axe. Were these different groups of people, or could a single Norseman really be a farmer, a trader, and a feared Viking raider, all in one lifetime? This is the great mystery at the heart of their story. So, when you picture a Viking, what comes to mind? Probably a fierce warrior with a horned helmet, right? But that image, the one we see in movies, is mostly a myth. The truth is much more interesting. The horned helmet was never a real thing they wore in battle. The person who sailed on that longship was not a monster. He was a father, a husband. He had a family waiting for him back at the farm. The stories he told his children were not just of battles, but of the strange and wonderful lands he had seen across the water. Think of him as an entrepreneur, a person starting a new business. Farming the hard, rocky soil of the north was a tough life. Raiding was a big risk, but it was also a chance to bring back silver, treasures, and goods that could change his family's life forever. This was a way to build a future. In Norse society, only the oldest son usually inherited the family farm. For younger sons, the choice was stark: work for your brother or go out and make your own fortune. The sea offered a path to wealth, land, and respect. So the man who stepped off that longship in the fall was the same man who had left in the spring. He was a farmer who knew the seasons and a raider who knew the tides. These were not two different people. They were two parts of one life, driven by the need to survive and build something better. And here is the truly amazing part. This seasonal job changed the map of the world. These Norse explorers, these part-time raiders, sailed all the way to North America. They built a small settlement there nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus was even born. Their reach was incredible. They traveled south to the great city of Constantinople, the heart of the powerful Byzantine Empire. There they were hired as the emperor's personal bodyguards, an elite force known as the Varangian Guard. And in the east, a group of Norsemen called the Rus gave their name to a new land: Russia. Their story is not locked away in a museum. It lives on with us right now. It's hidden in the words we speak every single day. Common English words like egg, sky, law, and window all came from the Old Norse language of the Vikings. Their legacy is a spirit of exploration, of pushing past the edge of the known world to see what lies beyond. It is a story of incredible courage and clever thinking. It is the story of a farmer's hand, one that could gently plant a seed in the earth, or firmly grip the handle of a sword ready to change his destiny. But the need for land did not stop with raiding. The same amazing ships that carried warriors could also carry families, animals, and the dream of a new home. The journey out was no longer just for a season of fighting. It became a search for a place to put down new roots far from the crowded farms of home. This search led them across the cold, empty seas to a place of fire and ice, Iceland. No one lived there. It was a fresh start. These Norse farmers and their families built a new kind of society, a free community without a king, governed by laws they made themselves in a great outdoor meeting called the Althing. From Iceland, the spirit of adventure pushed even further. A man named Eric the Red, banished for fighting, sailed west and found a huge island he called Greenland to attract more settlers. His son, Leif Erikson, grew up hearing stories of an unknown land even farther west, seen by a sailor blown off course. Imagine that journey. Leif and his small crew in an open wooden boat crossing the huge stormy North Atlantic. They were guided only by the sun and stars, and they found it, a land of forests, rivers full of fish, and wild grapes. They called it Vinland. They had reached North America, almost 500 years before Christopher Columbus. They tried to stay. They built a small settlement, the remains of which we can still see today in Canada. They cut down trees and prepared to build a new life in this new world. But this incredible Viking toehold in America did not last. After only a few years, the Norse people were gone. Why did they leave? The old stories, the sagas, speak of fights with the native people who already lived there, people the Vikings called Skraelings. Maybe the distance back to Greenland was just too far to get supplies or help. The first European chapter in America closed, leaving behind a great mystery. Back in Europe, the world was also changing. The small, weak kingdoms the Vikings first raided were gone. Now, strong kings with professional armies and stone castles ruled the land. A surprise raid with a few longships was no longer a recipe for easy treasure. The age of the Viking raider was coming to an end. At the same time, a new idea was spreading through Scandinavia. Missionaries brought the stories of a new god, and slowly the Norse people became Christians. The belief in Valhalla, a warrior's paradise, began to fade. The Viking way of life was changing from the inside out. The raider vanished, but the people did not. They settled in the lands they had once attacked. They became the Normans of France, who would later conquer England. They became the Rus, who gave their name to Russia. The Viking bloodline mixed with the peoples of Europe, becoming a hidden part of the story of many nations. So the feared Viking raider, born from a simple need for land, did not just disappear. He changed. He became a trader, an explorer, a settler, and a founder of kingdoms. That restless energy from the cold north didn't just break things, it also built new worlds and connected old ones in ways no one could have imagined.